Hello and welcome to Real Time Recorded with Zeus. Hello, Zeus.
Hey, David, how are you?
I'm all right. Today we got talk about a few different stories of week 22, week 22, 2021. We've got starting off the week with RingCentral and Deutsche Telekom. New partnership, starting with a co-branded version of RingCentral Video, or RCV, that includes video and messaging. It'll become available the second half of 2021. And I have to say, RCV has come a long way. I mean, the product was just launched, what was it, about a year ago? I can't remember. About a year ago. And they had some pretty big shoes to fill because they were using Zoom and they were trying to convince all their customers that this version 1 product is going to be as good or reasonably close to Zoom. And it's kind of a pretty impossible task to accomplish. But they did a reasonably good job at it. They're also doing a reasonably good job at winning over service providers: Vodafone, BT, AT&T, I think TELUS. And Zeus, you actually wrote a whole post on this. What are your thoughts? Do you think Deutsche Telekom will expand from RCV to the full RingCentral offer? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think they will over time. I do think your point though of the quality of RCV is notable here. I think this is obviously all part of Vlad's world domination tour, right? So there are some companies, some service providers that wanted to use Ring's brand and some of their partners as a way to be able to insert themselves into the cloud discussion. So I think even Avaya, Atos, companies like that needed the Ring brand as a way to legitimize themselves. Certainly with Deutsche Telekom, that's not the case. Their brand in Germany is as strong as Ring's brand is here. In fact, you could argue that that's probably the strongest tech brand in Germany. And so they didn't need the Ring label to legitimize themselves. What they needed was a good quality product. And I think this partnership really, in some ways, validates what you were saying about the quality of RingCentral Video today and where it's come. And I kind of... I didn't really give them proper credit for that. I thought that, as Zoom got into phone, Zoom would stomp all over them because Zoom's video was significantly better than Ring's video, but that's not the case. So they should set up an interesting kind of long-term competition between Zoom and Ring, much like we had with Cisco and Microsoft back in the on-prem days. So, but I do think we will see this expand. They did talk about this being phase 1, but I think over time you'll see them add the contact center pieces. I think some of this is Ring waiting to roll, to get their own contact center a little more robust. Whenever I ask Ring about it, they say, no, we're still partnering with NICE in contact, but let's face it, with the amount of money that people spend in contact center, there's no way they're not trying to build their own.
To me, the biggest clue was when they put out the press release a week or two ago saying, re-upping and recommitting to in contact. That they did that exact same stunt with Zoom like 3 months before they released RingCentral Video. So that was to me the hat tip that something's coming.
Yeah, that's always like when a sports team recommits to their coach and then 6 months later they fire him, right?
Yeah. Another story, which is kind of related or similar, is that Cisco announced an expanded partnership with AT&T. Now, of course, AT&T already had a partnership with Cisco. They call it the Collaborate service. But it looks like AT&T is moving more toward the WebEx offerings. And that means that they're getting out of the hosting business. At least I think they are. They're probably going to move away from BroadWorks and move into the hosting business with Cisco doing all the hosting globally. That gives AT&T two offers. They've got the WebEx offer from Cisco, and they've also got the at-hand offer powered by RingCentral, and that's pretty common. A lot of carriers like to have two solutions. In fact, AT&T had two solutions in the past. They had Cisco and they had BroadSoft, but Cisco acquired BroadSoft, so they're kind of just recreating that. And I think there's an important takeaway here that Cisco is establishing itself as a cloud provider, right? I mean, they were a hardware company, and they became a software company, and now they're becoming a cloud company. And AT&T is willing to let them host their service, and that's a pretty strong vote of confidence for Cisco in terms of their reliability and their speed to innovate and add new features. And that's basically the problem with companies that are doing their self-hosting. It also looks very similar to Verizon. who Verizon also has they have their One Talk offer, which is self-hosted with Cisco BroadWorks. They have they also sell RingCentral, but they also have Verizon RingCentral with Verizon. So they have the same two provider strategy, and the same two providers for that matter. Thoughts on this?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious to see how AT&T positions this. With Verizon, they made it very clear that the Ring offering they were going to use for upmarket. They still had One Talk that would be down market. They had a third offering in there as well for something else. I think for when they attached to mobile or something like that. But I haven't seen anything from AT&T on the position of this. Clearly there's also a 5G work from home play here. I also think this is good for Cisco. I think it validates a lot of the work they've been doing in shifting, making WebEx a more formidable UCaaS product and CCaaS product. And I was thinking about this the other day too, that this, what we've seen here over the last year or so, Dave, is a big shift in the telco model. Could you imagine like 10 years ago saying to AT&T that they were going to resell somebody else's product, right? Every telco built their own everything.
Yeah.
And I think what this shows, though, is the pace of innovation in cloud services is so fast that the telcos can't keep up, even as big as they are. And so now the telcos, I'm fascinated to see what happens to the telco industry down the road, because they are being relegated to pipes and they resell other people's products. Obviously, the size of the pipe they have, the quality of the pipe has a lot to do with the experience you get on the other people's products. But it is a big shift in the way those companies go to market.
Now you mentioned 5G there, and I think it's an important observation that we've got 3 5G carriers, really supposedly 4, but we have 3 5G carriers in the U.S. Verizon is leading with their One Talk offer, which is combining UCaaS and 5G together. That's powered by Cisco BroadWorks in the background, but it's Verizon branded. You've got T-Mobile leading with DialPad, actually, and that's branded as T-Mobile Collaborate. And AT&T, it'll be interesting to see which way they go. I've heard they're working on a RingCentral integration on 5G. I've also heard they're working on a Cisco integration with their 5G network. So they're kind of the wild card to see which way they go.
Also this week, Dave, Zoom announced their earnings. And this was a big quarter for Zoom, because up until now, the comps were pretty easy because it was getting post-pandemic growth numbers compared to pre-pandemic growth numbers. And so this Q1, fiscal Q1, is the first quarter where we can actually compare it to the COVID bump that they started to get in the early part of next year. And the company certainly didn't disappoint. Q1 sales were up 191%. I think they weren't really sure what to expect. Were we going to see a drop-off in sales? Were people going to ditch the free product and just not pay anything? But they've been converting a lot of those to paid seats. And so they put up a quarter that was almost $1 billion, $956 million. I would never have thought Zoom was $1 billion per quarter company. EPS was also really strong. It was $1.32, which was 34 cents ahead of consensus, which if you follow Wall Street, beating by 34 cents is pretty significant. They've also pivoted a lot of their business up market. If you look historically, pre-pandemic, most of their business came from under 10 employees. Now they had an increase of 87% growth in companies that were 10 employees or more. I think it's like 500,000 now. They're still generating tons and tons of cash. They upped full year guidance to almost $4 billion. I thought one of the interesting questions that Eric was asked on his earnings call was about contact center. Now, I believe you asked him about them on the industry analyst call, and Eric just gave you some sort of roundabout answer that didn't say anything.
We love contact center.
Yeah. But what he said on this was, watch for Zoomtopia. We'll announce something. And like I was talking about with Ring, where it's too big a market to stay out of, I think that's the case for Zoom. I think initially what you'll see is them come up with some sort of a customer care light thing and then look to add it later. But I thought this quarter was kind of a watershed quarter from Zoom, because we are seeing them shift away from just meetings. They sold a lot of phones. They're into meeting. There's Zoom Rooms are a lot better than they were. They do, I think, millions of webinar minutes a month now, which I think is sort of an undertold story there. They had this quarter, they launched their $100 million Zoom Apps Fund. And so I think just the overall secular trends of hybrid working create a big tailwind for Zoom, and I think it'll continue. But clearly this company's they're not just the same meetings company that we knew a year ago.
Well, Zoom's success is extraordinary. Some companies came out of this pandemic much stronger than they went into it. Zoom is clearly on top of that list. They really did well. And it was a tough time. I mean, Synergy just put out a report saying that even if you had double-digit growth, you may have lost market share due to Zoom and Microsoft growing as much as they did. So, real tough time. But Zoom did an extraordinary period this last year. And it's all on my shift, all on your shift, Zeus. I remember when Zoom was born. I mean, I can't say that about Cisco or Avaya or whatever, but I remember when Zoom was born. I remember totally dismissing them early on. You don't stand a chance. You got Poly, you got Cisco, you got Tandberg, you got Radvision. If they would have asked me for money, I would have laughed at them, So extraordinary story. A few things I want to highlight. You talked about the events. I think that, they're a big part of their message right now is they're not a video company. They're a platform company. They've got the events. They've got Zoom Phone. They said 1.5 million seats sold on phone. It's pretty extraordinary.
So the amazing thing about that number, Dave, is the first million took them 7 quarters, and the next 500,000 took them only 5 months. Right. So
well, they just announced their biggest enterprise deal. Yeah. They just closed. They did. I think it was in financial. I also want to highlight Zoom Chat. I am finding my Zoom Chat is becoming a social network. I'm using it more and more with people all over the industry, and it's pretty nice, I have to say. So they're really building out their story. I think people love Zoom. I was just talking to a relative that's taking classes at UCLA. And he says, I really like this Zoom software. I didn't even ask him. He just starts raving about it. But about the 1.5 million, though, I want to point out something, common misnomer that I'm sure you hear all the time, Zeus. Voice is dead. Phone is dead. No, Zoom just sold 1.5 million. So phone is not dead. Voice is not dead. Look at Clubhouse. Look at other apps. And they also introduced a really interesting feature. I really like it. It's called Smart Gallery. And basically, if you have a single camera in a meeting room and maybe 3 people around a table, instead of having one tile with 3 people in it, they're using AI to basically create 3 separate frames. They're not the only one doing it, but I think it's a really interesting and nice feature. And I think they still have a lot of growth ahead of them because I think they've done really well in certain markets, but the international market is still largely untapped, and I think they're going to see a lot of growth. Now, that said, they don't have a lot of moats protecting them. We've seen this before with video. I mean, people at their desk will click on any link. It doesn't really matter. And so they've got a lot of fierce competition. Microsoft's coming at them. Cisco is coming at them with a lot of innovation. Google made Meet free, basically. We just talked about RingCentral video. You've got Dialpad, acquiring High Five. A lot of stuff going on in that video space, and there's not a lot of protection once you win those accounts. And so, just like I said earlier, they had a long shot beating some of these entrenched incumbent vendors. Now they're the entrenched incumbent vendor, and people are coming after.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what their next act is from a sales and marketing perspective, right? Where they made a lot of hay with the simple phrase "meet happy," and but now they are trying to become a broader platform play. They are trying to integrate into other applications. They're building their own low-code interface, and so Janine Pelosi, their CMO, did a fantastic job through this phase. But I'm eagerly awaiting to see what Zoom's next act is. All right, well, Dave, that I think brings us to the end of week 22. I think there's a couple of events next week, so I'm sure we'll be back for week 23. So until then, thanks for joining us.